and welcome to KoshienCast, the world's best and only sports anime fan podcast. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a special guest, Matt.
Hi.
Hi, Matt.
Hi.
So this is week 6 of the fall season. We'll be covering every newly airing sports anime episode from November 6th to November 12th. Of course, there is one exception this week, as Long Riders once again did not air a new episode. Long Riders has aired 4 episodes so far. In its third week, it didn't air an episode at all, and now this week it aired a recap episode in Japan that Daisuke just elected not to distribute in the US because it had no new content. So needless to say, the production of Long Riders is facing some issues, and hopefully we'll get a few more episodes anyway so we can see it really go down in flames. But but anyway, I'm glad to be here with you this week, Matt. It's been kind of a strange week, so I'm glad I could look forward to doing this.
Yeah, I am with you on that.
All right, so do you want
I
to...
also just want to apologize to everybody real quick as well. I'm kind of fighting a tickle in my throat. Just hopefully I don't cough too much during this.
Well, hopefully. So I think we can move from the low of Long Riders to the high of Yuri on Ice, if you don't mind.
Oh, go for it, man.
All right. So episode 6 of Yuri on Ice. The episode begins with them flying to Beijing for the Cup of China tournament. And once they get there, Yuri and Victor, they run into Pitchett, who is a former teammate or training partner of Yuri's, and they go out and they get drunk. And they run into a bunch of the other skaters. In the process, Victor takes his shirt off and keeps hugging Yuri, and everyone puts it on Instagram, and it's a very big sensation, predictably. Once they actually get to the tournament itself, Pitchett is the first skater on the short routine, and he skates to a song called "Shall We Skate," which I guess is sort of a made-up song about skating in this universe. He does quite well. He's followed
Real
by...
quick, I just want to point out that the Shall We Skate, it was interesting because it was apparently meant to be a movie soundtrack song within the world.
Right. So he's followed up by Guan Hong, who is the Chinese skater. You don't really get to see his routine. Yuri, during this, decides that he won't, despite the fact that everyone is there telling him that they want to see Victor skate more, telling Victor that they want to see Victor skate again, Yuri decides that he wants to be hated by the world as the man who stole Victor from the world. So when he actually goes out to skate, he tells Victor, "Don't ever take your eyes off me." And then he touches their foreheads together. And when he gets out to skate, he says that I'm the only one in the world who knows Victor's love. And then at the end of his routine, he does extremely well. He has a couple slight mistakes, but overall he performs way above expectations. He draws the crowd in. And at the end, the announcer shouts, "Love wins," because of Yuri's theme. And then the announcer follows on and said that Yuri learned what love is in his routine. And he ends up going into first place. He gets 106 points, his leading score. He's followed by Georgie, who is another Russian skater who had sort of been in the shadow of Victor until this season, and he wants to break out and be the best in Russia. He skates to a routine based on his heartbreak over his girlfriend dumping him, and he cries the whole time while he skates. He's followed by an American skater named Leo de la Iglesia, who wants to fill the world with stuff he likes, and he likes music, so he dances to his music. Anyway, I don't know. It was very... Anyway. And then last is Christoph, who is a Swiss skater who skates with a slow burn where he starts off weak but ends up very strong. And he skates with what he calls a mature sex appeal. His routine goes well, and he thinks it's going so well that at the end he talks about just how well it's going. And That's a
We can't
euphemism
say what
because
he says.
he says something that I don't want to say on the podcast. But and so then at the end, you realize that Yuri got the top score, and he gets interviewed and says that he will win with the power of love.
Yep. Okay, so we discussed this a little bit beforehand, Matt. We actually watched the episode together.
Yeah, we though it was a fun thing to do. I don't know that we'll do it every week, but we did just um, watched Haikyu and Yuri on Ice and actually Keijo, which I'll bring up later, together and discussed it while we watched it, which was fun.
Oh yeah,
It made it hard because you can't really pause, but other than that, it was fun.
yeah. So this episode has taken a lot of the yaoi subtext. They've really taken it out of the subtext and have kind of made it the text at this
We
point.
say this every week, man. I
No,
mean,
I know,
like it
I
just gets
know,
more and more textual.
I know. Well, because I mean, there's a line in there that Victor states where he's like bugging Yuri during his interview, where he's like, "Hey, let's go get some hot pot afterwards," and he's like, "No, no, I'm busy right now. Just give me one moment." And all I'm just thinking is, this sounds like an actual couple.
Yeah.
Like this isn't just like a lot of yaoi, they try and sort of like almost fetishize the relationship between two dudes.
Right.
It's like this sort of unbreaking love, but it's like this is a moment where it's like, man, these guys just feel like a normal couple at this point.
Yeah, their interactions aren't all sexy or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Not all of them, but it's like these. It actually feels like this is a pretty stable relationship. Um, Other than that, there's a lot of skating this episode.
Yeah, it was a lot of skating, which is
It,
great.
oh yeah, because the skating is one of the strongest points of the series. I did though. As much as I do love watching the skating, it does. I don't know how to put this.
It kind of blends together.
Yeah, kinda. That is kind of one of the issues I have as well because they're not really going much. Like one of the ways that a lot of other sports series they kind of try and spice up. They give you details about what's actually going on. And here they just kind of throw these very nice looking skating routines at you,
Yeah.
but they don't really kind of explain like what it's doing or how they're doing it in the middle of it.
Yeah, or why they construct it a certain way.
Yeah,
I see they're like, oh my gosh, a triple toe loop, and I'm like, looks cool, but I don't have any context for what that means in terms of points. I don't have any
yeah,
context for what that means in terms of difficulty, or why connecting two jumps together is more or less difficult depending on the combination.
yeah. That's a great way to put it actually. And it's like on one hand, it's kind of refreshing to actually have a series that presents this stuff like an actual match.
Right, yeah. It's
Yeah,
like if you were watching the Olympics, this is how you'd take it in. They aren't going to explain it to you.
yeah, exactly. And in one way, I kind of appreciate it, but like this episode in particular, it was very apparent that there wasn't really much going on outside of introducing all of these characters. And I guess,
Mm-hmm.
admittedly, through the routines, we kind of learn a lot about their personalities. I love Georgi.
Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Oh, I don't know. There's just something about him about him being the evil skater because he has to prove like it's not even so much about the fact that his heart was broken and he wanted to show the world. He has to prove through his figure skating that there is no such thing as true love. All of your hopes and dreams are pointless, and that your heart will constantly be broken if you keep clinging on to these ideals.
Yeah, he dreams of himself as an evil witch while he's
Right.
performing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and the thought of this just breaks his heart so much that he has to cry. Like he's just bawling during the entirety of his routine. So he truly feels this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I liked the introduction of, you know, a victor rival who what like there's more than one Russian character, which I liked.
yeah.
Um I don't know. I thought the it was funny sort of the way I guess what I'm getting at is what did you think of some of the cultural implications which, with all these skaters representing their countries, like the way that the American was portrayed as opposed to the Swiss guy, or for example.
Honestly, I guess I didn't really even notice it because I guess part of the problem was that the American skater he had kind of a boring story, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I kind of just didn't think of him. Like, it doesn't seem like I've seen worse representations of other nationalities in anime. I know, low hanging fruit there. I know, but
Sure. Yeah.
a low bar to jump over there. But like, I didn't really think too much about it. Like, it's not like Tiger Mask where I'm noting, oh God, please stop.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there was a little stereotyping, but it didn't feel like the show had any antipathy towards any of the characters based on where they came from.
Yeah, exactly. Like Pitchit just seems like he's just one of Yuri's friends. He's not. There's
Yeah.
nothing really about him. They kind of make. I thought this was kind of a weird tidbit that they brought out was the fact that this is the song that Pitchit skates to. It's like this is the first time that anybody from his country has ever skated to this song,
Right.
and it was just kind of like, is that like a big deal?
Well, I mean, I think for him, like part of his narrative is that he's from Thailand, which doesn't have
Right.
a history of figure skating, so he wants to be able to claim a famous song that's used by a lot of figure skaters. He wants to claim it for
Oh.
himself, even as a man from Thailand.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. Okay, I can give it that. I do like how that song, by the way, it really does feel. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know enough about music. I never took music theory or anything like that. It really does feel like it is part of a movie soundtrack. Like I
Yeah.
thought that was something that they did pretty well was distinguishing all the different, like picking songs that are specifically going to sound very different from one another
Yeah.
within each of their routines.
No, I agree. It it's interesting just because it felt like it was straight out of a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing about it. Just one other thing I wanted to bring up as well was there was something subtle I really liked how they handled in this episode, which was how Yurio actually got beaten.
Oh yeah, at the very beginning they acknowledged that he got second place in the Canadian
Yeah,
Cup.
yeah, exactly. Like like they do this through just through a like a newscast where they're just kind of
Right.
going over the results, and they didn't feel the need like nobody had to like bring up the fact that oh wow Yurio actually got second place. Like there was no character who was like commenting on that or anything like that, but they just showed you okay, so this character got first place, this character got second place, blah blah blah. It's like I thought that was a really interesting way to actually like establish like the power dynamic here.
Mm,
So in a lot of anime and a lot of sports battle series, they have to do different things in order to establish like general rank and strength in comparison to other characters. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to do it without having to make it like so blatantly obvious that this was what they were doing at the time. So now we know that the Canadian skater is actually somebody for Yuri to have to look out to.
So I'm trying to picture what's an example of a series that might do that a little more clumsily.
More clumsy. I can tell you a series that does it pretty well,
Okay.
which would be Baby Steps, and that would be in regards to the seeds, in regards to the seeded players. So
Oh yeah.
what oftentimes happens is that what will happen is Maru will play a character who is seeded. He will struggle against that character, and then depending on how the story wants to go, he'll either win or lose against it. They'll oftentimes, however, make it sure it's not the first seeded character. It's always going to be somebody who's a little bit lower in
Hmm.
the seeding, and then he'll go up against another suited character who's a little bit higher. Like in a good example of that would be Arya, who was like the second seed next to Takumi in that series.
Right.
He goes up against Arya and he loses to Arya. Uh,
Spoilers.
Oh yeah, sorry. Should probably should have stated spoilers. Um, and so that's kind of done just to generally show where the power dynamic is. Uh Maruo is at least around the level of like I would say the third seeded character of this particular
Yeah.
tournament. But that way, when they go into the next tournament and we see, oh, Arya's only like fourth seeded in this tournament, and there are three other people beyond him,
Right. Yeah.
and
No.
that's
That
a
that's that's good. And I think in answering my own question a little bit, a series that fails to do this is Days. I mean, it fails to do a lot of things, but it habitually will introduce schools, halfway through the show and say like, "Oh, but they're the best. They're our true rivals." And you've never heard anyone mention them before. So you're expected to believe the fact that this other random team is actually the best, better than anyone they've ever played when they've never been introduced or put in context against any other team
Yes.
before.
Yes, that's
Uh,
an excellent way to put it.
so I think overall with this episode on Yuri on Ice, it was fun to watch as a display of its animation prowess. It was fun to see the different skating styles. It didn't really move the story that far forward. The only things it did for me was it showed that Yuri has legitimately become one of the best skaters in the world. And so
Right.
establishing that, like, no, he's not just good in Japan, he's actually good globally. So putting his training into context against other players or against other skaters is good. The other thing is like every episode, it just solidified more the nature of the relationship between Yuri and Victor. Um, the fact that Yuri, when exposed to the fact that a lot of people just want Victor to go back to skating, Yuri doesn't care, and he says that he wants Victor all to himself, and he doesn't care what anyone else says. That's significant,
Yeah.
and so I thought that was
Yeah,
good to
it
see.
kind of shows a little bit more self confidence in himself because he's been kind of on this. He started off the series as being very like, oh, I don't know if I can ever live up to Victor's expectations. Now we're at a point where he's actually willing to be like, no, I'm gonna take Victor's place now.
Yeah, exactly. So, move on to another show that lives up to expectations?
You mean Scorching Ping Pong Girls? No.
No, Haikyu.
Yes, I know.
Okay. That was really smooth, by the way. Really,
That was
really,
better in my head.
yeah. So Haikyu, episode 6. The episode begins with a flashback to the first year when Suwa, Asahi, and Daichi are freshmen at Karasuno. They're the only new members of the Karasuno volleyball team. It's a pretty small team, and there's no coach. Um, so as they've established before, Coach Ukai left the school, and so they don't have a coach anymore, and none of the other schools want to practice with them after the coach left. The other schools basically don't think it's worth their time because Karasuno is not strong enough anymore. But Daichi and the others decide that they want to rebuild the glory of Karasuno, and so they practice on their own because they want to grow and they feel like the team is dragging. Um, Initially, the seniors don't believe that their goal of aiming for nationals is realistic, and so they don't think they should have that as their goal. But eventually, they come around, um, and they compete in the inner high. Then it cuts back um, after the fact, and the team. This is still in the flashback. The team loses in the second round of the inner high, but the captain demands that they keep building their style, and eventually someday Karasuno will be great again. So then it cuts back to the fourth set. Um, the two teams are tied at 20-20, and Karasuno is trying to basically nail down Shiratorizawa's new patterns. There's a lot of back and forth. I'm not going to go into every detail. Um, but eventually Karasuno is able to take advantage and pull ahead. The coach of Shiratorizawa remarks that Karasuno is evolving within the match, which is just sort of one of those sports anime cliches we all look for. Um, Towards the end of this set, several players start to suspect that Kageyama is getting exhausted because he's involved in every play and he's not able to perform at his best, and so other characters start having to cover for him. Um, Ushiwaka is able to force the set into a deuce, but eventually they work back and forth, and the old man with a hat on yells, "I'm counting on you, Karasuno," and that motivates them. Hinata is able at the end with an advantage of 28-27. He's able to jump up for a spike, but ultimately, instead of hitting with his right hand, he tips the ball over with his left hand to get set point, and we move to the final and decisive fifth set.
Which we will probably spend the next 4 episodes on, maybe 3 with a wrap-up episode at the
I
end.
imagine it'll end in episode 9, but yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm anticipating, but I can't, say for certain. This was a decent episode. It's like you mentioned at the beginning when we first started the season that you were kind of expecting to be kind of ready for this to be done with like around episode 6 or 7.
Right.
I'm kind of getting to that point, honestly.
Yeah, it's a little. The only issue for me is that it's a little difficult to feel all the momentum because it's forced to drag out so much.
Yeah, it kind of almost feels like a sugar rush. Like it's really, really exciting and fun for like these first few episodes, but it's kind of trying to keep this tension going. And it's at this point, I'm just kind of like I'm kind of coming down, and I just sort of want to. I kind of just want to see this end. Like
Yeah.
I'm enjoying myself, but this is. I'm glad that the season is only 10 episodes. Let me just leave it at that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's still great,
Oh
but
yeah, it's still good. It's
what do
still. I
you?
mean, I would still easily recommend this to anybody. But watching this week to week, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is interesting. I'm glad, but
So,
I'd
what do
like
you
to see this
think?
go on.
Because the way they've been pacing out this match, it's actually gone a little faster than we expected to. We didn't
Right.
expect to be through 4 sets in 6 episodes. Um, and really in 5 episodes because they just barely started the match in the first one. So, what do you think they're gonna do with the next few episodes to slow it down and to extend the fifth set?
We're probably gonna have to see some more. They're probably gonna try and do something else with Hinata because he's actually been, despite being the main character, he's been pretty. Like he hasn't had a lot of focus in this like
Yeah,
particular arc
if
or in
anything,
this.
Tsukishima has had more attention paid
Right.
on
I
him than
actually kind of
Hinata.
wrote that down in my notes. It's like he's really like Tsukishima really feels more like the main character of this season because a lot of a lot of the character growth this season and a lot of the character progression has almost all been on Tsukishima. It's only really been in the most recent episodes that we've really seen any Hinata development.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder too. I wonder if we'll see more flashbacks from the Shiratorizawa side because we saw one for their setter Shirabu.
Yeah.
Um, but that was about it. We didn't see an extended flashback for any of the other players. So I wonder, that would be my guess, is that we'll see a lot more from their perspective of how they built the team and probably a number of other players reflecting on their relationship with Ushiwaka. I can't imagine we'll get anything from his perspective, but yeah.
Most likely not. He doesn't seem. We might get like I think maybe at the very end of the game we might see something from
Yeah.
Ushiwaka's perspective, but that's going to be the only time we do.
Yeah, episode 10 material.
Yeah, basically. Um, I think the other thing is, and this is a complaint I've had with Haikyu a couple times in the past. It does have this kind of frustrating tendency to resolve a lot of its matches the same way, which is the two teams are fighting. Uh, One team pretty clearly pulls ahead in the end, like towards the end of the match. It's almost match point. The other side miraculously starts to pull it around towards the end. They get to a deuce, and then we start focusing a lot more on trying to break free from the deuce.
Right.
And it's not like again, it's not like a big deal, but I'm starting to notice the pattern a little bit
Well,
more.
it's exactly what happened in the second set too.
Yeah, exactly. It's what happened in the second set. That's what happened with a lot of the matches against Alba Josai
Yeah.
in the previous seasons. Again, it's not like a big deal, but it does start to get a little frustrating when they're not willing to play more with the formula.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, Karasuno hasn't won a set in this match that hasn't gone to deuce.
Yeah.
Um, so
Whereas, and I mean, I get what the original author was trying to do was trying to, this is, get, edge of your seat. This is going to be like a really tense, like nail biting match. It's like, oh, it's coming right down to the wire. But when you do that every single time, it kind of starts to get less exciting. It
Yeah.
would be a lot more interesting to see them actually like pull ahead and then like create a lot more tension about keeping the lead.
Yeah, it would be weird if Karasuno came into one of these matches as the favorite.
Yeah. Uh,
I mean, I guess they did earlier in last season. They came into several matches as the favorite, but they didn't. I don't know. It just felt a little like there was not as much risk.
yeah. And that's kind of the and like again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm really like just suddenly I'm just down on Haikyu because there's still like this is still like a beautifully animated and like well shot like anime, like no doubt about that. There are a couple of things I really liked in this. For example, there's a moment when they Karasuno brings themselves up to match point. They have a shot of like everybody who's on like the stands, and you can even see like Kyoko like tensing up. She like brings her notebook like right up to her mouth,
Yeah.
and it's like it's again small details like that that are really fun to see. Just small instances of character development there because Kyoko has always been a very distant, kind of a female Tsukishima essentially.
Yeah.
Kind of even watching her get like really involved and like excited by this match, it's a nice touch.
Yeah. I don't know. It was fun. That's the only thing is that Haikyuu's never not going to be a fun show. In
Yeah,
terms of
so
it being interesting, it's not necessarily interesting every week.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Do you have
so
anything
yeah,
else on this one?
I'm good. Do you want to move on to March comes in like a lion?
Yeah, that's definitely a show with something interesting this week. So yeah, so this is episode 6 of March Comes In Like a Lion. A lot again. This is an episode with a lot more content than it had earlier. Um, the episode begins with Ray eating with his adoptive family. They all muse on where they would like to go for vacation, and Ray realizes that he has nowhere he wants to go. Of course. Um, it then jumps to Ray at his talking to his teacher Hayashida about how a bunch of other students are doing a study camp, but Ray can't go because he has a shogi match, and the teacher identifies that Ray is secretly glad he doesn't have to go because he doesn't want to have be forced to hang out with a bunch of guys he doesn't know because that's Ray. Um, the teacher then talks with Ray again later and wonders why Ray re-enrolled in high school when Ray doesn't actually talk to anyone or have any friends. Ray remembers how Kyoko told him that he was always going to be alone, and uh, so Ray then considers the fact that he was desperately looking for somewhere to belong, and he was hoping that by becoming independent, by becoming a pro shogi player, that would get him there. He then reminisces about how when he first became a pro shogi player, he was pretty depressed and he would just sleep all day. When he didn't have matches, he stopped cooking for himself, he stopped taking care of himself, and he basically stagnated in the lowest professional rank for 2 years. Um, he has a sort of a dream or a vision or a metaphor, whatever, of how growing up he felt like he was trying to swim through the ocean, and eventually he got to dry land, and the dry land was becoming an independent professional where he didn't have to struggle anymore. He could just accept stagnation by just chilling on this island in the middle of an ocean of struggle. Um, and he wondered whether he would ever be willing to risk going back into the ocean and having to struggle through life instead of just stagnating where he was comfortable. Um, he has a flashback to the time that he passed by Soya, otherwise known as the Child of God, who is the Japanese shogi champ and has been so for many years. Um, and then Ray talks about Soya with his teacher Hayashida. He also mentions the fact that that he's the fifth middle schooler to ever become a professional shogi player, and that all four of his predecessors all became masters, and he feels a lot of pressure that people put on him because they expect him to become a master just like the first four. But he doubts whether he's capable. He thinks he's pretty ordinary and not a prodigy. And he really feels that pressure. Um, and so in the end, Ray runs into Hana, of course, because she's the only other person in the city, and he buys her a shake. They go out to McDonald's, and she
McDonald's, thank you.
Sorry, McDonald's, and she invites him over for dinner, and he's very moved by this.
Yeah,
so, yeah, it was a long summary, but it felt like there was a lot of meat in this episode.
Real quick, did you watch the very end of the episode after the credits? Because there was like 2 more minutes after the credits.
Awesome. No, I didn't. I assumed there wasn't any. Go
Not
ahead.
a whole lot happens, but I'll go ahead and describe it. Basically, what happens is while Ray and Hana are eating, the boy that Hana had a crush in 2 episodes ago stopped in at the restaurant.
Classic.
And came up and wanted to sit down with the 2 of them. And Hana freaks out, so Ray decides that, he's being a third wheel here, so he gets up to leave. Hana kind of grabs him, and she's like, please don't let me leave, because she's super nervous. And then she just freaks out and runs away, and then Ray is left there sitting with her crush. And that's pretty much the end of the episode.
Okay.
Okay, so what I really liked about this episode, and this was interesting because this was something you had brought up in the very first episode, and I'm kind of noticing this now myself. I like the way that the series is portraying depression, because it does feel very at home.
Yeah.
It hits a little close to home for me at times, a little bit.
Yeah.
Just the way that the imagery of Ray just swimming and just this constant swimming and I swam and I swam and I swam and I swam and he finally gets to this place that he wants to be at. Like, hey, I can finally stop struggling, and it can feel like that in depression sometimes when you finally make some progress and you start thinking to yourself, well, this doesn't feel normal.
Yeah.
It started the constant struggling and and then suddenly you're starting to feel fine with your life. It doesn't. You start to wonder, is this really right? Because you get so used to that. And there are a couple other things that Ray says and does too that I thought were really interesting. Like, for example, when he's talking to there's a scene where he's passing by some older men, and during that scene where he's thinking about how he's like the 5th professional shogi middle school player.
Yeah.
And those men, he passes by some men who are like, oh, well, you're trained to be the future master, right? Like, you're probably going to become like the next master. It's like, well, it's okay because, all the masters have a slump at some point.
Yeah.
And, in their minds, they could have actually been trying to be very, friendly and encouraging.
Yeah,
but the way Ray takes it is, you stupid punk, you think you're, that good? Well, guess what? You ain't making master.
Yeah. Yeah, he sees himself as, a letdown or a disappointment, and that he feels all the pressure when probably they're just like, okay, but, you're 17, and it's crazy impressive that you're a pro at all.
Right. They're in their minds, we don't know that for certain, but in their minds they were probably trying to be very encouraging.
Yeah.
Hey, you're young, it's fine for you to make mistakes, not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he turns around pretty much anything that's meant to be encouraging as a negative, or there's another scene when he's talking with this I think may have happened after the credits, but when he's talking with Hana, and he realizes how depressed she, or how many that she and her family have to go through all these issues, and Ray thinks to himself, well, geez, here I am always constantly concerned about my problems. Why don't I think about I've never even considered Hana's own issues. And again, he's kind of beating himself up where he doesn't need to.
Well, and it happens separately with Hayashida, his teacher, who makes an offhanded remark. Basically, I don't have it written down exactly, but he basically says that well, you'll find your own way to win, or something like that, which isn't necessarily even about shogi, but immediately Ray takes that and says, oh, he's referring to the fact that I just lost twice in a row.
Right.
He's trying to lay it on, and which on some level isn't true because it's established that Hayashida is this very direct person who doesn't mince words, but Rei still takes it as a passive aggressive slight.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny too because like his teacher is outside of the girls in his adoptive family. He's like one of the only other like positive influences in his life because he's the only one who's actually like even more so than the girls. He's one of the only people that's actually like trying to reach out to him and understand him.
Well, yeah, and he clearly cares about Rei's shogi career and he follows it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he wants to, talk with him. He comes up with this strategy and like he shows it to Ray and Ray kind of doesn't even think twice about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, so all I have to do is this and this and yeah, I win."
Yeah. So did you have any thoughts on you got a lot more development on Rei's teacher Hayashida in this episode?
Right. Um I didn't have a lot of thoughts about it. I also kind of took it like the way I took it was that Ray is overly concerned with how other people are going to take him.
Hmm.
Because a lot of what because in Hayashida, like Hayashida's trying to do things that he feels are going to make Ray feel more comfortable, and Ray takes that as this guy. He doesn't seem to understand how social cues work. Like, how's it going to look with you like trying to eat with me in the classroom during lunch?
Right.
Whereas Hayashida, he's probably trying to act like a teacher,
Hmm.
like, and he can't seem to and Ray can't seem to understand that part of Hayashida's job is to actually like try and get more involved with him.
Hmm. Yeah, he just sees him as being weird and not abiding by social norms.
Right. Exactly. Whereas, Hayashida is probably just trying to, be a decent teacher
Yeah.
and, actually help Ray through his problems.
It's like Rei, like you don't talk to anybody.
Right.
Why are you concerned with social norms?
Yeah, exactly. But again, I think that considering what's been established about Ray, I think that's pretty understandable. Maybe not sympathetic for everybody, but at least
Yeah,
understandable.
no, absolutely. I wasn't trying to
Oh,
trying to
no, 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 you're
criticize.
fine. Um, And then the other thing I kind of wanted to bring up was the whole scene where Hana invites Ray over to dinner.
Okay.
Because I thought it was kind of weird that they made this big dramatic moment.
Right, like as if this hasn't happened before.
Right, but when you think about it, actually, it is kind of a big deal. Uh, because of the fact that Akari has always been the one to bug Ray to come over.
Oh yeah.
Hana has always been very like passive about it, and it's understandable because Akari brings in this like basically brings in this bum, wants to kind of like fix him up and take care of him as she does with like other animals.
Uh-huh.
Why is this any of Hana's business?
Right. And she's just a middle schooler. Like
Yeah, she's just a middle schooler. It's not her job to be concerned about Ray.
right.
So I feel like that the entire purpose of like why they decided to turn into this big dramatic moment where we get like this silhouette shot of the two of them like sitting at like this fast food restaurant, like this big like romanticized version of it is the fact that this is actually a very significant change for the two of them
Hmm.
and how their relation has been because Ray has always kind of like intruded in Hana's life.
Sure.
He kind of follows her after she kind of wants to be left alone to cry. He kind of like and this is the first time that Hana's ever actually like reached out to him and is like, "Do you want to come by? I'm fine with it."
Right. That's an interesting thought. I guess it does change both of them. It changes for Ray too, just because it's I guess it for him it might feel less like an obligation because with Akari it always felt like he might have interpreted that she was just sort of patronizing him
Right.
or trying to help him out because he was so pathetic, but this felt like more like a peer. Even though she's younger than him, it felt like someone who didn't have to care about him was choosing to, and that was
Right.
probably something that felt new for him.
Yeah. And it's kind of going back to like when we think about to the last episode, where he was kind of brought in by this one person who wanted to take care of him, and when that happened, you know the entire family basically collapsed. Like
Right. Right.
the older sister, basically became kind of started gallivanting around town. The younger son just decided
He
to
becomes a neat.
yeah, exactly. So this is the first time, somebody who was basically feeling the effects of being forced into being into a relationship with Ray is still concerned about him now.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It's interesting too to see if you can briefly compare Koda, his adoptive father, to Hana, and say that Ray, when he was brought into that house, felt like there was an implied obligation that he become an apprentice in shogi.
Right.
And this is probably the first time that he's felt like he was being invited into someone's home with no strings attached.
Right. This was just a very casual, like, hey, you want to come to dinner?
Yeah. Yeah, and that, but you can see how that would be meaningful. The last thing I wanted to address on this episode is the character of Soya, or Soya, um, who is I guess, ostensibly the point of because the episode is called The Child of God, right?
Right.
And I'm sort of like, well, that's a strange title. Is this about Jesus? um, and uh, they eventually identify that the Child of God is just a title or a nickname reserved for the champion of Japanese shogi, a guy named Soya. Um, but he only appears relatively briefly. He's sort of in and out, and people Hayashida asks about him, like, oh, have you ever met Soya? And Ray's like, no, he's way higher ranked than me. Sometimes I'll see him at tournaments, but he's way out of my league, basically. And so he's this champion who's reigned for years and years, not clear just how long, who has gray hair, but otherwise looks very similar to Ray, just an older version of Ray.
Right.
Did you get anything out of that, or any of his other illusions?
Uh, the major thing, see, it's funny because you mentioned the fact that he looks like an older version of Ray, because my first thought was actually he looked like the teacher.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I guess we can just sort of interpret that Soda is supposed to be
Soya.
basically the future of Ray, or how Ray sees how his future is going to go.
Hmm.
Um, and we don't know that for certain because again, we're kind of assuming that everything in the series is going to be about Ray. Which
Yeah,
I mean,
I wonder if Ray would see himself in that, like, the way that Soya is portrayed is sort of very removed and elite and just sort of untouchable. He's
right,
all on his own. He doesn't have You never see him pictured with anyone else. Um, you wonder if that eventually they're going to use as a contrast to say, like, if you keep going down this road, Ray, this is what you're going to become. Yes, you'll become the best shogi player, but you'll also be alone.
right. And is that something you truly, really want?
Yeah.
Cool, cool. So do you want to move on to Scorching Ping Pong Girls?
I always love to discuss those ping pong girls and the way that they scorch. All right, so Scorching Ping Pong Girls, episode 6. This focuses a lot more on your favorite character and mine, Hokuto. Starts with a flashback of the girls in elementary school, and Hokuto is invited to go hang out with some of the other kids after school. She says she can't because she has to help out her family, and Hanabi notices this, and then Hokuto goes to work at her family store. Back in the present, Agari accuses Koyori of slacking off because Koyori's smashes aren't as strong anymore. Hokuto immediately analyzes it and realizes that the rubber on Koyori's paddle is wearing down, and she suggests she gets some new ones, but Koyori has no money because she's been buying cosplay stuff. And so they basically, Hanabi offers on Hokuto's behalf that Koyori come work at Hokuto's ping pong store. Yes, her family owns a store dedicated entirely to ping pong, which is somehow a sustainable business model.
I actually wrote that in my notes.
Yeah. And says that, she can pay for her new equipment with labor. And so they go, and Koyori's learning how to run the cash register, and this creepy green-haired goth lowly character comes in and tries to buy a bunch of stuff, and she creeps out Koyori, but Koyori gets through it and rings everyone up because she learns how to relax and ends up giving this creepy girl a bunny t-shirt she's earned through coupons, and the girl says that she is quote unquote deathly sure that this will be the proper price for her weekly friendship fee, whatever the hell that means. Um, it's revealed by Kirika that this is the girl that the team is going to play in their next practice match, and that this creepy girl is actually the driver of the East, so one of the parallel drivers to Agari. Um, Eventually, the whole ping pong club shows up at Hokuto's family store, and Hokuto's parents are, of course, still nowhere to be seen. And so all the kids show up, and Kirika says that Agari was super worried about whether Koyori was going to be okay all by herself. And then they both blush and fumble, and it's all very cutesy. And finally, you get a flashback again to how Hanabi and Hokuto first became friends. Basically, Hanabi followed Hokuto to her ping pong store one time and just hung out there, and then decided, because Hokuto said table tennis was fun, and so Hanabi decided to play table tennis too, and then decided to start working at the store with Hokuto, and it made Hokuto blush. And the end.
Yeah, so my first thought upon watching this episode was, how is a ping pong store understaffed?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also manned entirely by one child.
Oh, yeah, I didn't quite get that. Okay, so in Japan, they do have a lot, like, in Japan, I have seen this firsthand, it is a lot more sustainable to have very small, very niche stores.
Okay.
That being said, I feel like Hokuto's store was far bigger than it really needed to be for that.
Yeah, it was not a small store.
Yeah, it felt like it was like a fairly like decent sized like retail chain
Yeah,
almost.
it was like the size of a Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe not like that big, but way bigger than you would need for like ping pong equipment.
Yeah,
For like
how
solely
much
ping pong.
equipment is there?
Right. Like exactly. Because even in the U.S. we just have we have like sports focal we have small stores focused on like sports equipment. But that's like all sports equipment.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so they'll have an aisle, and it'll have ping pong paddles and probably rubbers and balls. And
Right.
also, it's funny how much they use the word rubber,
Yeah.
but I'm just gonna ignore that.
No, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought with this store that was weird is, so in this episode, um, Hokuto and Koyori and Hanabi all miss practice because they're manning the store. And then it's established earlier that Hokuto often has to go straight from school to man the store. But this has never happened in any episode
Yeah.
previously. Like, Hokuto's always been at practice, and this is the first time, and now suddenly she has to be at the store at the same time that the other girls are at practice. Like, what? I don't really understand the sequence of events that led this to being the day that they had to miss practice to be at the store. Does she do it once a week? Is it like, it was just very unclear.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this was something that because this is based off a manga, I think we found out.
Yes.
Um, so I kind of feel like this was a detail in the manga that the author hadn't really quite thought out in the first place
Oh,
when he first wrote up the characters, and then when it came time to start writing more background for like the other characters before we get into the big tournament arc,
right.
he thought, oh well, Hokuto works at a ping pong store that
Yeah.
her family runs, and it'll
And
be very sad if she always has to work there by herself.
yeah, so that's how she became friends with Hanabi.
Yeah,
There you go. That's the pairing.
yeah. We probably should have mentioned that one as well.
Yeah. So
Um,
I don't know. Overall, it was not that interesting. I mean, there
Uh,
was almost no ping pong.
One thing I do want to say is that at the very least, like, because this episode reminded me a lot of the last episode of Long Riders.
Yeah.
And in the sense, at the very least, when they're kind of just doing like a small cooldown episode, just sort of a slice of life episode. At the very least, it still feels like it's about ping pong.
That's true.
Like, and that's not something. And like, with that last episode of Long Riders, I didn't get any sense that this show was about like cycling in the
Oh yeah,
least.
I mean, like, I am deeply grateful that Hokuto doesn't actually work at a maid cafe.
Yeah, I
That
know.
would break me.
But no, the fact that we still get ping pong lessons because the fact she explains what the different types of rubbers can do and what types of shots you like to focus on. She can like supply like the better like types of rubber, and it's like
Hmm.
okay, you know what? That's at least that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, of course, she always has to end such a statement with, and of course, you can also learn the color of your panties. And it's like, oh my god, quit saying that. That's not funny.
Yeah. It's even the other characters acknowledge that's weird. Stop saying that.
Yeah,
But
please stop saying that.
of
It's not
course,
that funny.
I can't because this is an otaku show.
I know.
Um, all right. You want to discuss our our secret favorite show, Tiger Mask?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Tiger Mask was I don't know. It was episode 7. I guess I won't give it. So the episode starts off. They're still in Okinawa, and Haruna wants to go to the beach with Naoto, and he says okay. So she gets in her swimsuit, and he goes out on the beach, and he's doing squats, and she's like, "Well, that's not what I meant." And so then they go get ice cream, and then it cuts to Kuruma, who is a reporter for Pro Wrestling Monthly, who's trying to investigate the original Tiger Mask and figure out who the new Tiger Mask is. She goes to interview Naoto, and uh, so basically she gives a lot of background on what the original Tiger Mask did in the original series, which was interesting. And she says basically that the original Tiger Mask rejected the practices of Tiger's Den, um, and he fought in order to give all of his winning proceeds to kids in an orphanage because he himself had been an orphan. In his last match, he defeated the master of Tiger's Den, Tiger the Great, but in the process, his face was revealed as Naoto Date, and he disappeared and he never showed up again. Then it cuts to Takuma fighting Bossman again in the United States. Apparently, Bossman is the American champion, but but then Takuma beats him and becomes the American champion himself. Bossman is relegated to the local circuit, and then Miss X meets up with Mr. X, who is, I guess, her boss, and Mr. X reiterates that the priority for Global Wrestling Monopoly is to defeat Tiger Mask, because since they were destroyed by the first Tiger Mask, they cannot allow anyone using that name to fight, because they will it will undermine their legitimacy or whatever. And Miss X indicates that they're building a new stadium in Japan where they will destroy Tiger Mask. Okay. Um, They go back to Okinawa, and Tiger Mask fights in a tag team match, and he suplexes, of course, and wins. And there's an old man there who watched the first Tiger Mask, and he's very impressed by Naoto, and Tiger Mask is the champion of the people. Haruno sells out of all their merch. They fly back home, and then Naoto reveals that the only thing he bought was a bunch of identical t-shirts with a tiger cosplaying as an Okinawan lion.
Okay, so yeah, one thing I would like to point out about the episode is that yet again we had very few lines from Takumi. In fact, we only had one line, which was him just saying Mike and like Mike. Kevin.
Kevin. Yes.
And I think that was just them reusing an old line.
Oh, really? Just an old recording?
Yeah, I think they just reused like an old recording because I'm pretty sure he said the exact same thing in a couple of episodes ago.
Wait, so what
Cause
happened to Takuma's voice actor?
yeah, again, I don't know. Either they're like in the process of having to replace him and they're kind of just scrambling right now, or they're just trying to get out of paying him as much as possible. Like
Yeah.
I don't really know what's going on with that.
Weird. I didn't think about the fact that that was the only line he said.
I think he grunts once.
Sure, but who knows if that's
Yeah,
authentic
again,
grunting?
that if that's just something they had recorded before again.
Yeah.
Um, so I had a different interpretation of the old man. I thought he was the actual old Tiger Mask.
Oh, no, I don't think so at all.
Okay, well, because the episode was called Naoto and Naoto, and we never found out the name of the old man?
Yeah, I think that was just because they showed the flashbacks of the old Tiger Mask.
Right. I guess. I did kind of like how they go through the flashback to like the old Tiger Mask. I kind of appreciated the fact that they kept it like in the same art style as the very original series.
Yeah, that's true.
I,
Um,
I
so
can't really speak, out of nostalgia for it, but
it definitely looked like a different art style though, which was cool. The other thing with the old man is that they did at one point show a cut of him as a child watching the original Tiger Mask.
oh,
So it's
okay.
like it had a parallel shot of him sitting in the same seat watching the new Tiger Mask and then watching the old Tiger Mask in his memory. Um,
Okay. So
so
I'm wondering then if he was supposed to be like a recurring character in the original series. Like if he
maybe
was like if he was supposed to be like a recurring
a
like
fan.
child spectator
Yeah.
or something like that. So did Haruna think like want to go on a date with Tiger Mask?
What do you mean?
Well, because of the whole thing about how she goes at she because it wasn't so much that she
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
changes into her swimsuit. She goes out to buy a new swimsuit that's clearly supposed to be like a little bit sexier. And she's mad that Naoto just wants to train,
Yeah,
and
of
then she
course,
makes him
yeah.
treat her to ice cream. So I was just a little confused. I was like, so is she trying to date him?
Yeah, it's very unclear because this show is kind of 50% terrible. And um I didn't get that. I thought she just wanted to like go to the beach and look cute, but again, who knows because
I,
there's not enough meat to it. I still interpret their relationship as brother sister.
you're probably right, but I don't know. I just thought it was weird that she was like getting mad at him for just like, why are you training right now?
Well, I
Why
think
aren't you swimming?
yeah, I think it was just a needlessly elaborate way of them justifying the two of them going out to get ice cream and um running into the old man who was like talking about how pro wrestling is better than karate, which I
Fair
guess is an
enough.
argument that people get in.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know.
One final thing I did want to bring up: they brought back Jeet again, and he did nothing.
Yeah, Gorilla Jeet Singh.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, they just introduced him as being at the tournament.
yeah. He just like because after Ryu like finishes his match and wins, like all of a sudden Ryu jumps out, and it looks like they're gonna start doing another thing with him, and then it cuts away, and nothing happens with Jeet.
Yeah. Gorilla Jeet Singh, he just walks in and everyone's terrified of him because he's swinging his scimitar around again. That wacky Gorilla Jeet Singh. And I was like, oh, good. Now we'll get some development of him as a character. Nope.
No.
Nothing. Which, whatever. Just stop including him in episodes at this
Yeah,
point.
please. It's getting uncomfortable. I mean, it
Yeah.
was uncomfortable in the first place.
Oh, it was more than uncomfortable last week.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, hopefully because these last two have been pretty empty episodes.
Right.
Hopefully next week we'll get some more content. Like we'll see whatever plan GWM has for defeating Tiger Mask, and he can actually fight interesting opponents again.
Yeah, because that was the problem. Was because I feel like they kind of showed their hand a little too quickly by making him fight the strongest fighter they ever had.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like we're gonna spend the rest of the season reminiscing about how awesome the fight against Red Death Mask was, and not really be able to move on. But
That's probably
we
true.
probably should move on to All Out.
Or as I have in my note, all out.
Good input, Matt. Thanks.
Sorry.
All right, so All Out episode 6. So again, all of the guys are staying over at the school, and Guion has a dream in which he gets a super try, and in the process he slams Iwa's head onto the ground. But when Iwa wakes up, he sees Ibumi leaving in the middle of the night. Um, the next day, the coach has all the players run around the school, and Ibumi's pissed because no one's trying hard enough. Eventually, Ibumi gets in a fight with a number of the other backs because he thinks that they're not working hard enough. He says that they accuse him of skipping practice all the time. He says he only skips because he doesn't want to waste his time with losers like them, etc., etc. Um, Eventually, the coach gets them to quit fighting. Uh, the coach later asks what the team's goal is, and they don't really have an answer, and he's confused by this. Eventually, Sekizan says that they want to go to Hanazono, which he describes as the Koshien of rugby, basically the national championships for high school rugby. The coach says that they will have no chance of getting there because their equipment is outdated and they lack motivation. Guion, of course, immediately says that they don't lack motivation. He'll do whatever it takes. The next day, in first thing in the morning, Ibumi again wakes up in the middle of the night. Turns out he was exercising by himself before practice, and then Matsu finds him, and they discuss a little bit about his background. You discover that Ibumi was a bully initially, but he got recruited onto the rugby team and realized that it was sort of tailor made for him because he was allowed to be violent and get rewarded for it. But he hated how the former seniors were satisfied with a loss. Um, Ultimately, the everybody comes out and shows Ibumi that they want to practice with him and that he's a part of the team. And it's all very nice, but then Sekizan yells at them because it's 3 in the morning and they need to go back to sleep. Um, so the next day they work out even harder than ever before. They're completely broken down and they wonder, what's the point? How can they ever catch up and actually compete at Hanazono? But the coach says, they have just as good a shot of anyone as long as they go, wait for it, all out every day.
Woo!
If they can go all out every day and give their max effort every time they practice, they can become the best team in Japan. That sort of sets them up for the rest of the season, I guess.
So as per usual, I'm about 50-50 on this.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts, real quick?
Um, I'm probably a little higher on this again. The big reason being that I like Ibumi's background and I like them delving a little more into his character, and I enjoy any interaction with the coach.
Right.
And I like the I guess the thing I like most is that it showed that the team really doesn't think of themselves as a very good team and realistically
Yes.
has no chance of going to nationals.
Yes, that is what I liked. I thought that was a really interesting twist because a lot of sports series jump basically jump into the team. You have an outsider who comes into the team, which is a pretty decent team, but they're always being held back by the fact that they just don't have the players, but they have the will and the fight to want to go on to nationals.
Right.
But we're getting a twist on that in this series, where this is a team that doesn't have any passion for it. This is a team that they don't have any sort of belief. It's like even Sekizan, the wise senior character that the series has already played with, he's the one who kind of has to half-heartedly say it's like, well, I guess we would like to go to Hanazono.
Right, exactly. But he doesn't really believe it.
Yeah, exactly. Like nobody believes in it. And I think that's a really interesting twist to take.
Yeah.
I thought the stuff with Ibumi was fine. Again, it kind of goes back to my previous problem though, where Gion just really is not feeling like the main character
Well,
right
yeah,
now.
nobody feels like the main character.
Right. I thought again, it's kind of the same problem that Days has sometimes, where we have a character who feels like that they would be a better main character,
Yeah.
and I feel like Abumi is one of those characters.
Yeah, he'd be way more interesting than Gion, who has about 2 inches of depth to him.
Yeah, who's basically like, I'm short, I want to fight people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like at the very least, Abumi is like, I am a naturally violent person who has finally found an outlet in the sport,
Yeah.
which also amusingly is also kind of Gion's motivation.
Right. Yeah.
But again, with like Gion, like okay, so the series opens up, like the episode opens up with a kind of funny gag about Gion wanting to like tackle people in his sleep
Yeah.
because he's tackling Iwashimizu like in his sleep and he won't like let him go or anything like that.
Right.
And it's like it's kind of a funny gag. At the same time though, it's like, do I really believe that Gion is really like that passionate about the sport right now?
Well, yeah, it's funny because he's dreaming about getting not just a try, but a super try that gets them 20 points. Of course, he's played in one game and he's never even touched the ball.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's kind of what's weird to me about it is the fact that all he can think about right now and like everything that's just dominating right now is rugby, and it's just like I don't feel like you've really had the proper development to really justify that.
Yeah, why do you care about rugby this much? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that's not really fair because he is in a sports anime. Of course he cares about rugby, and it's kind of nice to see that Gion and Abumi are the only ones who really truly do care about rugby. You know, they're the only ones who are unironically passionate about being great at rugby. You know,
right,
Abumi is the one who's working out more than he's supposed to, and Gion is the one who just invited a random coach to train them because they needed improvement, and who immediately says that he'll do whatever training regimen it takes in order to be the best. Um, so I, I I know that he's a stupid character, but I do appreciate his stupidity as a contrast to the
right,
reticence and sort
right.
of the cynicism of a lot of the other players.
Right, and I think that's an interesting point that I hadn't quite considered was the fact that Gion is going to be the one who sort of spurs about this change in the team.
Yeah.
Like because he's the only one who like because he's an outsider who can like who finds his passion in it.
Yeah,
I
whereas
guess
like Ibumi is the same way in that he's truly passionate about rugby, but everyone hates him because he's a jerk. And the that becomes difficult for them to manage basically.
right. I did have one slight issue with the fact which was the whole thing about it's like, hey, you've been cutting practices and stuff like that. Like you've been going out at night. Like what are you doing? And as soon as they said that, I just immediately like he's training.
Yeah, oh, obviously he was training. I mean,
Yeah,
he
it's
was
like
he was in workout shorts with a hoodie on, so of course he's going out to run. Of
right.
course, what else would he be doing? It's a sports anime.
Yeah, kind of. It's like okay, like come on, guys.
Yeah, I like that they treat it like it's a mystery, as if he's sneaking out at 3 a.m. to get drunk or something. But
Yeah, exactly. Or going out to like see a girl or
yeah,
something like that. It's like he's obviously training guys.
yeah. Anyway, so it was a little lazy, but
Eh,
um,
it's at least picking itself up. It's doing some interesting things at the very least, which is more than I could say what it was doing at the beginning.
and I will say that I also like that Sekizan made them go back to bed because this
Yes.
series once again it was right on the verge of saying you should just exercise all the time and not sleep and that's a good thing, and then it's like no, that's still unhealthy. Stop doing that.
It's like this is still stupid, you guys. Please go back to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad that they at least acknowledged that that wasn't the best lifestyle choice. All right. Do you have anything else for this? I feel like there wasn't a ton of meat here.
No, not really. I'm about ready to go on to days if you are.
I am very ready to discuss Days. So, Days episode 7, it starts right after the end of the match against Seikon. Um, Himura of Seikon, he realizes that Seiseki was able to win because they were quote unquote hungrier. Whatever. Um,
Yeah.
After the match, Kazuma drags Tsukamoto to talk to his mom with him. Tsukamoto says that Kazuma is great, and that makes Kazuma's mom very happy. And then Kazuma thanks his mom for helping him meet Tsukamoto, and then asks, "Hey mom, are you free this winter?"
I hadn't even thought about that line.
She says yes, and he says, "Well, we're going to nationals, and I want you to be there." And it's very nice. So then they fly back. They're on the plane, and Ubikata dreams of going to nationals and sketches out soccer plays, which she can apparently do now. Back at school, you see that Sakamoto is running with all the other first years and yelling as a group, as per usual. Kazuma is on the sidelines with a crutch, and he notes that Sakamoto has become indispensable to their team. The tournament schedule for the national tournament is released, and the basically Seiseki is in the same block as the one of the reigning champion of Tokyo, which is a school called Toen Academy, which I guess is one of the other 4 great schools in Tokyo. And so they realize that if they want to go to nationals, they'll have to go through Toen. They set up for the first game against some random school. Sakamoto is not in the starting lineup. And he says it's a good thing because he doesn't have enough resolve. Then he starts worrying that it might be the third year's last game. But so Mizuki has a speech before the game, and he says that no matter what their past failures were, this is the game that will prove their training was legitimate. And then they win off screen. In the process, Mizuki gets a yellow card, which I guess will come up later. Then the end of the episode is Kimishita and Oshibara getting in a fight for some reason after school.
Because they don't like each other, remember?
Yeah, they just don't like each other. So they get in a fight. Oshibara declares that he's going to be the next captain, and he's going to lead the school to defend its championship, and then Sakamoto is going to defend it again, so they'll have a three-peat. Sakamoto appreciates Oshibara's optimism and says that he's not going to think about losing anymore. He's just going to think about winning so that he can keep his team together as long as possible.
Okay. So, one thing I want to bring up that really is getting frustrating is the whole thing about how Mizuki has a yellow card because he clearly accidentally slid into a goalie's face.
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, so there's not very much animation here.
Yeah.
But you can clearly see that this was an accident. Why does he get a yellow card when there are characters that have clearly been grabbing other players during the middle of matches?
And they get nothing.
Well,
yeah, and if you want to give him a yellow card, don't make it something that's borderline. Just make him actually make a violent mistake. I guess on some level, they can't make Mizuki ever make mistakes. Like, he can't ever be violent, and so they have to make it so it's not his fault. But it also doesn't really feel like, by the standards of the show, that he deserved that penalty.
Yeah, exactly. Like, considering everything else that has ever happened in this series, considering the fact that last season we had the team that was devoted to committing fouls and grabbing people by their shirts and throwing them down and never being called out for it.
Yeah, exactly. But no.
Like, oh, no, but Mizuki accidentally sliding into somebody. No, that's a red card. That's a yellow card right there. Just, do you understand soccer?
Well, I mean, we're at the point where we realize that they don't. And
I know, but every single time sometimes I just find something that just really irritates me.
Yeah, I mean, the episode was kind of empty because it began with their last match ending, and pretty much all it did is set up the new tournament. And then it didn't even show anything from the game that they played because they have no animation budget.
Game's over.
Exactly. So they sort of preface that before they can face Toen, they're going to have to face some other school with a really long, complicated name that I didn't write down that is going to be their biggest threat. So probably in the next episode or two, they're going to have to face this other school before they can play Toen. I don't know. I don't know how this this show is going to wrap itself up in 24 episodes total.
Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna have to pretty much skip through everything, and like, who knows? They may just end it like just before the game for Towen, so that they can have hopes of getting a new season.
I
Like,
guess.
that's the only thing I can think of. I have no idea how popular the show has been this
I mean,
season.
it better be more popular in Japan than it is in America, because it's definitely not getting
Yeah,
any traction over here.
yeah, definitely. And so there's one other line I wanted to bring up. I forget who says it, but they basically say something along the lines of, "If you lose, that ends your soccer career in high school for the third
That
years."
was the coach.
Okay, that was the coach.
Yeah.
Isn't Mizuki being considered for the national team?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're just saying it ends their high school career, but yes.
But I don't know. I feel like that line lacks any sort of tension or weight when we know at the very least that some of these players are very clearly like they're talented enough to go onto the national team. They're being considered for it. So their
Or at least to
career
play
isn't
in college.
right. Exactly. Like it's not exactly that scary, you know?
Well,
Soccer is a pretty widespread sport.
it is, but the they're not saying it's your last soccer match ever, but I think the way a lot of these sports shows work is they treat the high school team as this absolutely vaunted and irreplaceable experience, right? Um,
Right.
and this is sort of mirrored in the way that high school baseball is treated in Japan generally, where
Right.
it is elevated as the most watched sports event. So even if high school baseball players go on to play in college, they will never play in a more culturally important tournament than Koshien, the high school baseball tournament. So I think there might be some of that, um, where people treat the high school team as being the most important team they'll ever be on some level.
Right.
Um, because once you go pro, like you're just getting paid to be there, but it's not really your team in the same way.
Right. I suppose that's fair. Um, yeah, I guess I hadn't really quite thought about it like that.
And it's the last time you'll be surrounded by your friends and all that
Right,
stuff.
playing something you really love to do. I guess. I don't know. I guess it doesn't work for me on the level because, we don't really care about any of these characters. And I guess, outside of Mizuki, and, Mizuki's pretty much set, so.
Yeah. But that's the thing though. Like, try and put yourself in the shoes of a high school athlete and facing the potentially the last match of your high school career. Yeah, you know that you could still play that sport again, but you'll be starting over. And there is
Right.
something special about this team, these people, this thing I've been doing for 3 years. I don't want it to end yet. So I
Right.
think that's legitimate, honestly.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I'm not one to defend days, but
No,
uh,
I see what you're saying.
speaking of something difficult to defend in this episode, do you want to talk about Kazuma talking to his mother?
Oh, yes, please, let's do that.
All right. So yeah, what did you think of it generally?
Basically, can the series get off of Tsukamoto for like 1 minute?
Right?
Like, Jin or Kazuma's having this grand reconciliation with his mother, and it's still the important takeaway from it is that he met Tsukamoto because of their issues, whatever they were.
Yeah, they're unspecified issues. Kazuma
They're
has not seen his mother for 8 years, and he just
years.
talks about how much he likes Tsukamoto.
It's like, oh well, thank you. I met Tsukamoto because of you, and it's like this could not. I'm sorry, but this just could not be any more of a self-insert for I don't know who for the viewer to be like, oh, he's so important. He believes in himself so little that even this big popular guy,
Yeah.
this genius, owes everything to me.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what the purpose of it is. It might just be lazy writing. I do have to say that "Are you free this winter" is one of my favorite lines from the show.
Oh yeah, are you free during the general time of
Yeah,
winter?
are you free sometime between December and March? Like, that is way too big a window. And she
Well, it's
says
like I don't know.
yes. She just says, "Oh yeah, I should be free for 3 or 4 months. Like,
Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm sure I can find some time in there.
it's
Like,
like, well,
yeah,
yeah,
of course you can.
who isn't free sometime in a 4-month period? What a weird question. Um, yeah,
Uh,
so that was great. And then
um,
yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say real quick, like going back to the whole thing about Tsukamoto, it really irritates me about the fact that he's the one who scored this defining goal against this other team.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they made this whole big deal about the fact that he has no ego and how he takes one for the team because he doesn't care about scoring a goal. He just wants to do what's right by the team.
Yeah, but they put him in a
And
position where he had to score the goal.
right, exactly. And it just feels like no, he doesn't get all of the goals, but he got the goal that matters.
Right.
And it kind of belittles the entire point that they were trying to make about the fact that Tsukamoto doesn't care about like standing out on this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. It just again this feels like okay, but if you do that, don't worry, you can really get the goal if you want to.
Right. They're still giving it to him even though they said he didn't have to have it. It is funny in the second. I mean, honestly, this episode went super slow and there was not much meat in it, and it was pretty
Right.
boring. But I liked how long it took and how deep we are into this series for the moral at the end of the episode to be Tsukamoto realizing that he should think about winning. Like, really? Like, that's the revelation you're getting on, what is
Yeah.
this, episode 19?
Considering it, I complained about this during All Out about the whole thing about how Gion suddenly had this revelation of you have to hang on to our ball. At least that was episode 3.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
This is the 19th episode. We're finally getting to Tsukamoto actually wanting to win.
Yeah, it's this show. I mean, it's better than Long Riders. That's all I can say. So do
It's
you?
at least an interesting bad.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to another interesting bad?
Yeah, let's talk about Keijo.
All right.
Okay, so, basically this entire episode, it's a cool down from the last episode, of course. We had Nozomi and the gang going out to Kyoto for training as sanctioned by the school. Um, they stop off in an area and they say it's like, you have free time. And my initial thought was, no, this is a test.
Right.
I was incorrect. No, it was just literally just free time.
Yep.
And they go around and explore kind of this touristy area. Miyata kind of withdraws from the group. She wants to make some suggestions, but she's kind of she's talked down. No, like nobody lets her get in a word edgewise, so she goes out and visits on her own. But Nozomi comes in and she wants to speak to her because she wants to hang out with her friend. And Miyata just finds this delightful. Like she's thrilled that she has a friend now. And then they go exploring, and then it's off to the actual training camp.
Yeah.
Like I thought for sure this was going to be a test.
Yeah. No, it's just a little slice of life.
Yeah, just a little slice of life there. So everybody is in. So basically, what happens is everybody gets in. Like once they get to Kyoto, everybody is assigned an instructor. Nozomi is told that she is supposed to train in infighting now. So Nozomi's excited about this because this is the style that she's probably most suited for.
Yeah.
And so during their morning jog, they are like all of the infighters are out running and they are and like all of a sudden some random girl passes by them. They don't even know if she's part of the group or not, but she passes them and everybody just decides to just try and keep up with this girl for I guess out of pride.
Yeah, because no one's gonna be faster than them. Yeah.
Right, they have a couple of shots of them being with training weights on, so they're clearly moving slower. But they can't keep up with this girl. And then what happens is after they stop and they're all exhausted. I believe Nan is clumsy as usual. She trips and she knocks over all of these wooden logs that were tied up. And this girl that they couldn't keep up with is suddenly jumps in and she uses a butt missile to basically knock away all the logs from hitting everybody. And this is supposed to be the big badass introduction of Kyoko, who is actually their senior in the school. She is already in the pro ring, and
well, she's not in the school. I don't think. I think she's just a pro.
Yeah, but she graduated from the school basically.
Yeah.
And so and she's basically the one who's going to be training them, and she's training all the infighters. So Nozomi has a practice match with her. There's kind of a funny little gag where she's where they're portraying her as basically being the ultra strict like instructor who hates mistakes.
Right.
Kind of pointing out the very inconsequential things that you wouldn't even think about, and pointing out how they're a huge deal. Like with Nozomi, she points out you're taking weight, your nails are way too long, you're leaving them way too long, and that's going to cause you're a gymnast type, so that's going to make it difficult for you to keep traction with your flips. But the joke is that she comes up and just cuts them off for her rather than scolding her and kicking her out of the team and
right.
making her reflect on why this is an issue. Anyway, Nozomi has her big practice match with her, and she just can't keep up with Kyoko. And that's pretty much the episode.
Yeah, so as I indicated, I did actually watch this episode with you because I don't know, I just sort of wanted to see what the hype was about.
Right.
I don't know if necessarily that's something I should have done because it did make it was the episode again. You said that this wasn't the most action packed, which was obvious.
Right.
But it seemed to drift back and forth between being boring and uncomfortable. And that was about as much of a tone shift as you got because there was a lot of random girls grabbing other girls' breasts and a lot of just weird stuff that's felt just pretty lazy Yuri baiting without any content behind it and fan service. And other than that, just poorly developed sports anime tropes, and not much else. No real meat to it.
Right. So that was actually kind of a complaint I had because you haven't really been following the other episodes. Because this episode was supposed to showcase the vacuum butt cannon's big weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nozomi can't basically. That's the whole end of the match is that she tries to build up the vacuum butt wave or butt cannon up against Kyoko, and Kyoko basically stops her and says, "You can't do this properly because you have a weakness with your body."
Right.
And so that's a pretty common trope in a lot of sports anime as well, where you have their big, awesome showcase move that's supposed to be this is their big signature move that they use to constantly win their matches. And you have a time period where you watch how this is the move that kind of gets them out of trouble, and then you finally have an instance where they're pointed out the big weakness to the move. And that was largely the point of this episode. The problem with that was she really just mastered the vacuum butt cannon last episode.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of weird about this is that we have not had enough time to see just how super powerful this vacuum butt cannon is. So for example, in Hajime no Ippo, Ippo's big signature move is the Dempsey roll.
Right.
This is the move that wins him the championship. And eventually, he has a lot of matches where he uses the Dempsey roll to diminishing gains.
Right.
Basically, so every time he uses it, it becomes less and less effective against each opponent until he finally has a match where it's perfectly countered and he doesn't know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like we jumped way too fast into this big weakness for Nozomi, for her big super special move.
Right.
Because she mastered it in one episode, and we're already seeing, no, never mind, you're not good enough for it.
Right.
That's really all I had to say on the matter. Beyond that, it just, like you said, it just wasn't terribly interesting. Honestly, even for this was a pretty weak episode, even for a lot of the fan servicey bits.
Yeah.
If that's something you're interested in, yeah, this was a kind of a boring episode.
Good. Well, way to go out on a high note. All right, Matt. So, all that being said, I think we're done for the week. Thank you for joining me. It was fun. It was fun watching some of these live with you.
It was fun watching two of these live, but not one.
Yeah, right. It's always something I look forward to doing this, and I'm glad we could do this week.
Oh yeah.
So, anyway, that's all I got. Could you go ahead and hit the credits for me?
I'm on it.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshienCast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.